You ever just stare at the play button?
You can't hide from what's in your head. Your friends can't help you. You are alone.
Not like you forgot what it does. You know what it does. You've probably clicked it 1,000 times by now. But you're sitting there, looking at your build, looking at your killer, and you just don't click yet. And it can't be because you don't want to play. You booted up the game, you picked your killer, you put your perks on. Everything is telling you that you want to do this. But there's this moment right before you click where your chest might get a little tight and your brain goes, okay, but what if we just checked Reddit instead? I do this a little more than I'd like to admit. I was sitting in the fridge the other day. The cooling unit still hasn't been fixed, by the way. There's a noise now. And I can't tell if it's the compressor dying or if something is living behind the vent. And I came across this thread. Killer anxiety is something. And the comments were just people describing exactly what I just described. That hesitation, that tightness, that little place between wanting to play and actually clicking the button. Some of these stuck with me. Someone said, paraphrasing, crazy that we're scared of getting bullied in an online game we play for fun. Multiple people mentioned physically shaking, trembling hands, sweaty palms. One person said their hands shake so bad during chase they can barely even play. Another said they're already shivering because their apartment is cold. And then the adrenaline kicks in, and it becomes this full body thing. That's not someone being overly dramatic. That's your body reacting before your brain even catches up. And then there was this one comment I keep coming back to. Someone said, I have an anxiety disorder and I struggle to play typical horror games. The fact that the only time I get scared in DBD is when I play killer, the supposed power fantasy role, is crazy to me. I guess the pressure to perform is scarier than actually being chased by one. That hit me really hard because it takes a lot of vulnerability to admit that, but it makes complete sense. When you're playing killer, the fear isn't always about the game anymore. Sometimes it's about failing in front of people, and that's a completely normal human thing to be afraid of. Here's something that doesn't really get talked about enough. Every match where someone DCs on first hook or gives up the second they realize who the killer is, there's a person on the other side of that lobby. And sometimes that person is someone from this Reddit thread, someone whose hands are shaking, someone who spent the first 5 minutes staring at their build before they could even queue. Someone who's worried about whether the other side is even having a good time. And then the match just empties out. That's not a win. That's just an empty room. I clipped this from Scott Junn's stream the other day. He sees who the killer is, and he just goes, Demogorgon.
Demogorgon? God, I haven't seen Demoed forever. Demo's actually pretty good on this map. Good for him.
That's genuine empathy for the person on the other side. He's looking at the killer's situation and being happy they might have a good game. And it's not rare. There are plenty of people who think like that. But it is so easy to forget they exist when the loudest moments in this game are the DCs or the GG easy in the in-game chat. The people who care the most about this game are often the least visible, and that can feel incredibly isolating. When you play Survivor, the weight is more shared. If you go down early, maybe your team picks up the slack. If you blow a gen, it usually doesn't matter. It's just one gen. If the whole game falls apart, your brain has places to distribute the blame. Nobody usually walks away from a bad Survivor match thinking that entire loss was on me. But Killer doesn't quite work like that, right? Playing Killer, you're alone. Think about the beginning of the movie Monsters, Inc. That nervous monster, Flim, steps into a fake bedroom to practice a scare. He sneaks up to the bed, leaves the door open, slips on a soccer ball, and lands on a pile of jacks, and just completely bombs it. The alarm goes off. And the worst part? The wall lifts up, and there's an entire room of people sitting in the dark with clipboards watching him fail. That's kind of what playing Killer feels like sometimes, right? If you nail it, that is completely yours. But if it goes wrong, you're alone on the scare floor. But the other side of that anxiety is exactly why we keep playing. Sure, the lows feel terrible, but the highs are so much higher than anything Survivor can usually give you. When you read someone's movements perfectly, when you snowball a game that felt lost 2 minutes ago, that's yours. And it feels earned specifically because of that vulnerability, because you were alone, because it could have gone wrong. The fear is what makes the payoff real. You don't get to keep one and throw away the other. They're on the same dial. Chaos Shuffle and 2v8 prove it. Both modes work great for burned out players because they strip away the weight. In Chaos Shuffle, the game picked your perks, so if it goes bad, it's not really on you. In 2v8, you've got people there with you. The pressure drops, and it feels great. But when you win in those modes, there's a little voice that goes, yeah, but it doesn't quite feel the same, does it? Normal 4v1 games keeps that dial all the way up. That's terrifying. But it's also why a win after a tense match is something you can carry around for the rest of the night.
Yes! Oh, that's brilliant.
And here's the thing, you'd think it would get better with time. You'd think after thousands of hours the anxiety fades. Sometimes it doesn't. One person in that thread had a P100 blight, Prestige 100, and said they can't even queue up their favorite killer anymore because people just kept telling them they suck and that they should just uninstall.
Did you see the way she looked at me?
That's not someone figuring out the controls anymore. That's someone who put in more hours than most people ever will. And the experience broke them anyway. When a killer loads in already anxious, already carrying the full weight of a 1v4, and the first survivor DCs as soon as you touch them, that's not even relief. That's the empty room again. You psyched yourself up to do something scary, and the thing just dissolved before it even started. The anxiety doesn't come from being new. It comes from caring. But I want to point out something from that thread because I think it really matters. A lot of the anxiety people describe isn't just, I'm scared of losing. A good chunk of it is, I want everyone to have fun. Someone said, my killer anxiety is that the match will drag on for super long and be boring for everyone. I just want everyone to have fun. They're not displaying their ego. That's actually the opposite of ego. That's someone loading into a match, worried about the experience of the people they're supposed to be hunting. You signed up to play Monster, but half the time you're sweating because you're trying to make sure everyone has a good time. Remember the simulator from earlier? Waternoose orders Sully to give a big loud roar, but Boo wandered into the room. A real kid. Someone he cares about. And she's terrified of him. And it breaks him. And it wasn't because he failed, but because he succeeded at the wrong thing. That's half the people playing killer. You signed up to play the monster. The objective was to literally sacrifice the opponents. But the anxiety isn't coming from a place of malice. It's coming from empathy. You don't want to be the reason someone on the other side isn't having fun. You roared, and now you're checking to see if the kid is okay. Sometimes the loudest voices in this game are the ones who DC, who give up, who type something toxic in the in-game chat. But the game is kept alive by the quiet ones. The ones who worry about whether the match was fun.
No, don't be scared.
The people nobody talks about are the people who care the most.
Snow cone?
Poor guy. I understand.
If you've ever felt that, if part of your killer anxiety is caring about whether the other side has a good time, I think that says something genuinely good about you. You're nervous because you give a shit. That's not a weakness. That's just what it feels like to care about something in a place where caring makes you vulnerable. I think killer anxiety is just what it feels like to do something alone that matters enough to be scary. And I think the people who feel it the most are the same people who are holding this game together. The ones who queue up anyway, the ones who don't DC when it goes wrong, the ones who stick around between the license chapters and the battle passes or the hype cycles. And honestly, reading that thread, seeing hundreds of people describe the exact same feeling, the same shaking hands, the same 5 minutes staring at the build screen, That's the part that actually gives me hope. Not because someone is going to magically fix the experience tomorrow, but because the people who care the most about this game are still here, still clicking the button, still showing up for each other even when it doesn't feel like anyone notices. The game is frustrating sometimes, but the people in it, the ones who get nervous because they actually give a shit, that's the part I'm not giving up on. So if you're staring at the play button right now, here's what I'll say. The anxiety doesn't mean you shouldn't click it. It might just mean you're about to do something that matters to you. And that's a good thing, even when it doesn't feel like one. Does this happen to you? Is it every match or just maybe the first one of the day? Has it gotten worse over time or better? Do you have kind of a pre-game thing you do? A ritual maybe? Or a routine? Something that helps you actually click the button? I would love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe goes a long way. If you're interested in joining the Discord, I'll put the link in the description below. I post clips, highlights, the stuff a little too dumb or too niche for a full video, but too good not to share. And if you haven't seen it yet, the last video I talked about what Otts got right about where this game is headed. I'll link that here. My name is Jen. Thanks for watching.